In the aftermath of the devastating 9/11 attacks on the US, the global community stood united in grief and condemnation. However, amidst the sea of condolences and expressions of solidarity, China's reaction stood out as peculiar and raised eyebrows around the world. What were the underlying reasons behind China's unconventional response to one of the most significant tragedies in modern history? And what does it reveal about the complex dynamics between nations in a time of crisis? Well, let's find out. The 9/11 attacks on New York and Washington led to improvements in the US-China relations. But what has been good for the US-China relationship has not been as good for the US, and specifically, the American interests at stake in the bilateral relationship. Initial responses to the incidents 10 years ago brought warmer US-China relations. A shocked Chinese president, Jiang Zemin, was quick to express sympathy for the US and the families of the victims, and to condemn all violent activities by terrorism. Beijing supported Washington's call for cooperation and responsive action, including the adoption of United Nations Security Council resolutions that condemned the attacks, called on all states to take measures to combat and prevent terrorist activities, and organizations generally, and Al-Qaeda and the Taliban specifically, endorsed international efforts to oust the Afghan Taliban regime that had provided shelter and support for Al-Qaeda, and demanded that Iraq cease obstructing UN-mandated inspections for weapons of mass destruction. While a similar pattern characterized the US's interactions with many states, it was particularly significant in relations between Washington and Beijing. In the immediately preceding period, tensions had been rising between the two countries. During the presidential campaign, George W. Bush criticized the Clinton administration for being too soft on China, arguing that China was a strategic competitor rather than a strategic partner. To some extent, this reprised a theme of standard-bearers of the out-of-power party in several presidential election cycles since the normalization of relations between the US and the People's Republic of China. During the Bush administration's first months in office, several incidents had increased friction in bilateral relations, including China's detention of a damaged US reconnaissance plane and its crew after a mid-air collision by a shadowing Chinese Air Force jet. Bush's proclamation that the US would do whatever it took to help Taiwan defend herself. The administration's criticism of China's intensifying attacks on religious freedom, targeting Christians, Muslims, followers of the Dalai Lama, and the banned Falun Gong sect, and friction over weapons issues, including the US's planned missile shield and China's proliferation of missile technology. More broadly, among foreign policy commentators and international relations analysts, the notion of a China threat and the related view that China's rise would inevitably bring conflicts with the United States and peril for American interests had been gaining traction before 9/11. As the US pursued China's backing, or at least acquaintance, it reduced the emphasis in its China policy on issues that brought friction with Beijing. Human rights critiques became more subdued, with Bush making relatively narrow and moderate remarks on the topic during Jiang's 2002 visit to the president's Texas ranch, and the US dropping its habitual post-Tiananmen sponsorship of a resolution criticizing China's record at the UN Human Rights Commission in 2003. Although partly reacting to the status quo shaking initiatives of the Taiwanese leader, the Bush administration also notably took a tougher and more Beijing accommodating line towards Taiwan during much of the post-9/11 period. Let us know your views in the comment section, and don't forget to show your support by engaging with this video and sharing it with others. For more content like this, do subscribe to our channel.